Hey! Welcome back to Lucas Narration channel where we dive into the juiciest and most jaw-dropping stories from Reddit. I'm your host, Lucas, and today I'll share with you a Reddit story that leaves me speechless. But before we jump into today's story, make sure to hit that subscribe button, grab a hot beverage, and let's get started. The story is from a Reddit user whose name is Basic Cherry 3008. He posted on the TrueOffMyChest subreddit sharing that he recently discovered a shocking truth about his upbringing. I, male, 18 years old, just found out that my father, 42 years old, baby-trapped my mother, 40 years old, with me. I grew up thinking my mother had abandoned us. That is what he always told me. He told me my mother packed up and left us when I turned 2 years old. I grew up to resent and hate her, mainly because I saw how my father was working super long hours to make ends meet. I hated how my grandma basically had to raise me. When I would ask her about my mother, my grandma painted a picture of a bitter, spiteful, hateful, spoiled / entitled woman. I felt very justified in my anger and hate for her. That's what my family told me, and I had absolutely no reason to doubt them. A few weeks ago, I found her on social media while at my boyfriend's house, and I was so effing mad. She was out there living her best life. She's a cook chef in a Michelin star restaurant. She travels, has a huge apartment, and apparently is married to a gorgeous man. In a fit of rage, I texted her accusing her out for abandoning me to live her frivolous life and that karma would come to her. She obviously saw it. Instead of going off on me, she just asked me to meet her and that she felt like I had a right to express my anger to her in person and that she owed me as much. I was starstruck because my father said she never stood for the consequences of her actions. Without telling anyone, I agreed. She invited me to this amazing restaurant. She paid an Uber for me and everything. It was very awkward at the beginning. I kept berating her. I was so angry. I cried a little. She just sat there and took it all in. I then asked her why she abandoned me. She then asked, this is all paraphrased, do you really want to know the whole story? It is not nice and you will not like it. I am ready to be the bad guy in your head forever and keep my distance. I just kept pressing her. And then she told me the real story. This is again paraphrased and to my best recollection. She told me that my father and she met shortly before ending uni. At that time, my mother had said she did not want to stay in uni town. A few months after dating, my father told her that his landlord was evicting him because the apartment was needed for immediate family use. She offered him to stay while he found something else. Months passed and he was not doing anything. Then she got a job offer in another country. She told my father that he could take over her apartment or come with her. They had this huge fight where my mother told him that she was not ready for the type of commitment he wanted. She wanted different things in life than him, and that as much as she loved him, that they weren't compatible. They stayed living together, and then one day she found out she was pregnant. She told me honestly that she was thinking of not having me. She did not feel ready to be a mom at 22. She did not feel maternal feelings. She said she was already struggling with depression and late-diagnosed ADHD. My father convinced her to have me. He said he would take me because he had a right to me. That he would go after her because that baby was also his. So she had me. She said that the time after birth was really bad. My father was dragging out the legal procedures. He refused to vacate the home. My mother said that while she felt love for me and that there were moments when she felt overjoyed, it was overshadowed by huge waves of suicidal ideation. She was scared that she was gonna hurt me. She also showed me some of the court documents of that time that backed up her claims. In the end, she was so desperate that she agreed to stay with my father if he agreed to be the main caretaker. He did, but only half-assed. My mother then told me that it got so bad that she tried to commit suicide around my 2nd birthday after a particularly nasty fight where my father admitted to having tampered with her birth control. She showed me the papers of the involuntary 72 hours commitment and the legal documents where she was found unfit to be a parent afterward. I felt nauseous after all that. I would have not believed her hadn't she brought so much evidence with her. She then asked me what I meant in my message that we were struggling. I told her that we were not exactly rich and that I was struggling to come up with the money to go to university in another city. She was bewildered and asked me what my father had been doing with the monthly payments she was making. I told her that we don't receive that money. Then she took out another stack of papers. Guys, she is sending child support every month. It is almost $3,000 every month. And that's the heart-wrenching story that has left us all in shock. Opie's whole life has turned out to be a lie, and now he faces the challenging decision of how to move forward. What would you do in his shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And now let's move on to the community comments to see what people said. We're starting with one comment that received a huge number of downvotes. That says, sad story. But I see a few holes in it. How did he tamper with her birth control? Remember, she left for another country and your father worked his ass off as a single dad to raise you. After my divorce, my ex abandoned all of our kids to me for a few years so she could go party and try to reclaim her 20s. She was mid-30s at this point. Then, after she was done having her fun, she came back and I allowed her back into the kid's life with no fuss. She immediately started undermining me, violating court orders, even got slapped with criminal charges and conviction for it. Child support goes to the other parent, not the children. When I started paying my prodigal ex-wife child support because she didn't work, she bought a luxury car and used it to go on trips. She'd call me to guilt-trip me about there not being food in the house, etc. She'd routinely not show up to get them at school for her week of parenting time, and I'd have to cancel the plans I made to pick our kids up and care for them. My point is, your dad has a lot more credibility in the story than your mom, in my opinion, especially with her extensive mental illness, suicidality, commitment to a mental hospital, etc. My opinion is she just didn't want to be a mom like she told your dad to begin with and bailed the country to escape it. You owe it to your father to discuss this with him. So, what you mean here is the mom is wrong and the dad is right while he has defamed her and painted a picture of a bitter, spiteful, hateful, entitled woman for many years? In addition, he did tamper with her birth control in the past. Another user thinks the dad is the a-hole, saying, your father must be a deadbeat or has some hidden addictions that have been hidden from you. $3,000 a month in child support, if spent entirely on you, would pay for any type of middle-class perks and advantages. This would include private schools, tutoring, and extracurricular activities. Another one replies, $3,000 a month is enough to work just a part-time, minimum wage job and get by in middle America. $3,000 a month plus a full-time job paying over $15 an hour is comfortably middle class almost anywhere in the United States. That is a decent Skrilla right there. Finally, one adds their comment, dude, that's $3,000 for just the kid. It's not supposed to be used for anything else. That sounds like an unemployed duckhead. That's $36,000 a year for the kid. After reading all the comments, Opie added an edit to help people have a better understanding of the story. He says, she is court-mandated to pay me $1,500. She doubled the payments out of her own will. She doesn't have to pay that amount. She wants to. She was very concerned about this and told me she would talk to her lawyers as soon as possible to transfer the money to me directly. In the end, she apologized to me. She is very sorry to have put me through this. She was very sorry for not being stronger, and she was very sorry for letting me grow up the way I did. She was crying. I was crying. She then told me to take my time. She would contact me again regarding the payments and that it was up to me if I wanted to see her again. That she couldn't be the mother I wanted, but the least she could do is help me with anything that I need. I hugged her. I cried. She cried. I boxed up my food and she got me another Uber home. At home, my father was not there. So I went straight to bed and left early the next morning and stayed with my boyfriend. My whole life is a lie. After for a year, Opie added an update. Just found records of domestic violence from my father to my mother. My life keeps crumbling. I have found out that my mother never really abandoned me because she didn't want me, but because she tried to commit suicide and was deemed unfit to parent, and that my father basically baby-trapped my mother with me. After the post yesterday, I went snooping even more because I do not trust my father anymore. I found records of domestic abuse perpetrated by my father toward my mother. He was charged but never ended up going to jail or did a very reduced sentence. This would have been when I was 2 after my mother was committed. I also found a restraining order filed by my mother against my father. It was so much worse than what she said. He did not only abuse her emotionally but also physically. I am feeling so disgusted. I could just scream. I returned to my boyfriend again. My father has been calling a lot asking why I had spent so much time away from home. Right now my excuse is a family emergency of my boyfriend. After yesterday, I wanted to confront him, but now I don't feel safe. Any advice? One Redditor immediately leaves a comment that says, don't say a word to your dad about it yet. Your mom is contacting her lawyers about the missing payments to you, which over the years adds up to around $500,000. By the way, if it was $3,000 payments from the start, half of that you'd directly be entitled to. He definitely deprived you of a lot. There needs to be time for all the ducks to be in a row and things to be organized and finalized before you confront anyone. Your mom's lawyers will take care of that confrontation. When all is said and done, then you can confront your dad. especially if you don't feel safe around him right now. If he asks about anything, you know nothing unless you've been instructed to say otherwise by your mom/her lawyers. Clearly your dad and grandmother have been in cahoots and there's more going on than what you know right now. I'm going to sound harsh, but please just keep your mouth shut for now. Talk to your mother and boyfriend if you need to vent or talk about things. Your grandmother and father don't need to know anything up until they absolutely have to, like you knew nothing about the situation you were in until you contacted your mom. They didn't tell you the truth for a reason, and until that becomes known, they aren't to be trusted. Later, Opie posted another one. Caught my father in a lie. Should I just cut my losses and cut him off from my life? My life was put upside down for the past weeks. So after staying for a while with my boyfriend, I decided to go home for a while because I wanted to get my legal documents and all of that. My father came back home and we talked a bit. I just asked him, by the way, did my mother never send you child support for me? My father just scoffed theatrically and went on this rant about how courts are always accessible to the mother and how they told him he couldn't expect anything from her and so on. He pulled that whole story of him begging her for money when he didn't have enough money for my school supplies and her turning him down. I know this is a lie. My mother kept itemized records of all her money wires to my father. Every month since she had a job. Meaning for over 15 years she has sent my father money. In the beginning, she sends him $400, then $600, then $1,000, and eventually $3,000. Then he kept talking, saying how hard it was. That he wished he would have gone after her more. But the courts were not in his favor. He told me how even now we were barely able to go paycheck to paycheck. His rant was surreal. After he left to go, God knows where, I went snooping through his room where I found a stack of cash in his sock drawer. It was over $5,000 crammed into the back of his drawer. Things are getting worse. I feel so weird. I cannot describe the ick. I have all my documents and wrote to my mother so we could maybe meet again. Should I just ghost my father? One good Samaritan who says, I've read all your other posts about this issue and I'm so sorry. I'm going to tell you this very frankly. You are being abused too. Financial abuse is one of the most fundamental elements of an abuser's control over their victim. Even by itself, it is abusive. By taking the money your mother paid for your well-being and spending it on God only knows what rather than the things you needed, schooling/university, housing, activities, toys, devices, etc. Your father has been financially abusing you for a long time. That money is for you, and while it sounds like at first it probably did lead to a very basic quality of life, for years now it has had the capacity to be so much more. Your father took that from you, and it seems you have no idea where that money went given your knowledge of household expenses. Your father is likely cruel to you in other ways too, many of which probably feel very normal for you due to how long it's been going on. I strongly recommend seeking a counselor with some of the money your mom is planning to start sending you to process that possibility, as well as everything else you have recently learned about your parents. What you need to know is that your father's psychological, sexual interfering with a partner's birth control is a recognized form of sexual abuse, and physical abuse was so severe that your mother tried to kill herself. This puts him in an extremely high-risk category of abuser. However your father may have historically treated you, please do not make the mistake of assuming that being his son inherently protects you from his rage. If you, the current subject of his abuse and his financial golden goose, attempt to confront him or warn him about your decision to leave, it could get unfathomably dangerous for you. I'm not saying your father definitely will hurt you for trying to leave, but you need to be aware of and plan for the possibility. Making a plan to vanish into the night without a trace could be critical to your safety. So when you plan your exit, plan for the possibility that it may need to be thorough and instantaneous. If you do choose to speak to or confront him with what you know, prepare yourself for the ability to walk away with everything you need to move on the second he gets violent. If he respects your decision, great. You can work with the aforementioned counselor to decide how you want to handle a positive conversation with your dad. If he becomes violent, then at least you don't need to go back for anything and risk seeing him. This means calling a domestic violence center for support in safety planning, resources for your exit, counseling referrals, etc. as soon as possible. Tell them everything that is happening to you and that you have learned, and ask them to help you plan your next steps, whatever they may be. Please be safe, and feel free to text me if you need help getting started. Opie does give us a full update in a comment which says, thinking of it, there have been plenty of red flags. He likes to put me down. Like I would come to him with a painting or anything else I have made and he would call it shit and tell me that is why I should learn a trade. He always puts down my friends and dismisses my opinions, saying I don't know what I am talking about. Sometimes he gets mad and ignores me for days on end. When I want to go do something special, he will dangle money over my head. Like I wanted to go to the cinema a year ago. He gave me a chore list and I made all the chores to be allowed out. But he came home and said I didn't do it well enough, so I don't get to go out. He actually did that a lot. He keeps telling me that I am not made out of university material. When he gets really mad, he shoves me and slaps me on the back of my head. One time I told him jokingly I was gonna root for a different soccer team and he kicked me out of the car and I had to walk home for 40 minutes. A lot of people in the comments agree that the father is an abuser, and one of the top comments says, "Looks like he enjoys making your mom look bad. Like he punishes her for something. It's terrible, really. I'm sorry." Another one agrees, saying, "Because he is an abuser." Opie said there were records of him attacking her. She attempted suicide. One popular tactic for abusers is to destroy their victims' credibility by pushing them to the brink of sanity and labeling the symptoms of their PTSD as unstable behavior. Also, public bashing and humiliation. Opie later provided another update. "What happened now? I did in fact contact my mother after finding all this out. I confronted her with the newfound information. She admitted that it was quite bad and she did fear for her life. My father apparently had friends in law enforcement that were following my mother and making her life impossible, giving her tickets for the most inconsequential stuff, pulling her over for random controls. Everything possible to intimidate her or to find dirt on her. My father put her to the ultimatum of just singing over without a fight or he would make her my life impossible. My mother told me that he had been abusing her since I was born, as early as 1 week postpartum. So when my father uttered the ultimatum, she felt hopeless and just tried to end it. It did not work, and after she was released, my father served her and battled for full custody. Because she was deemed unfit to parent, it was really easy for him. She told me the court actually went pretty hard on her. About a year after that, my mother attempted to establish visitation with me. She reached out to my father, who invited her over. He told her that she could be in my life if she agreed to be together with him again. My mother told him no, and then a fight ensued. That was the night he assaulted her. He assaulted her so badly that she wound up in the hospital. In the hospital, seeing her wounds, they had to report it. So he was sentenced to a year but only served 3 months. At that time, custody of me was with my grandmother. My father resumed custody of me at the time of being released. I was able to corroborate all this after reaching out to my aunt, who has not spoken to our family in 10 years. My Aunt Mia basically documented my mother's abuse. She took pictures of her bruises and recordings of my father screaming and threatening her. She told me that she testified against my father in court and that she could just back up everything my mother said because he was the same to her. I insisted on seeing the pictures and recordings. My aunt was resistant to this, but a part of me did not want to accept that this was reality. So yeah, my father is an effing monster. I told my mother about everything monetarily that I had found out. She said that legally there was not much we could do. But she spoke with her lawyer, and seeing as I am 18, she started the motion to start transferring me my child support money. She said that for the time being she would give me $1,500 monthly while she still had to pay my dad the money. As soon as the process is greenlit, I am going to get it all. She also agreed to pay for my matriculation fees as well as for the deposit and first month's rent of an apartment in my uni town so that I could be as independent as possible. For now, I have only sent in my applications a couple of weeks ago, so I should get any news on that front by September. We decided that confronting my father was not a good idea for neither of us. So we decided on telling my father that my boyfriend's parents invited me to vacation. But he does not know I am gay. So we plan on telling him that this is the last vacation to say goodbye to my friend. I have talked to my boyfriend and his parents. They did not even hesitate and immediately said yes. They now know everything and support me 100%. So my mother and his parents are sending us for 2 weeks to a nearby country where they have a summer house. I told my father about the plans and he said that as long as his parents were paying that it was all right. He did tell me that I had to help him with a million things before leaving again. So I am already seeing a fight on the horizon. But I have managed to get all my important documents and open a bank account thanks to my aunt's help. So on Thursday, I am officially leaving for 2 weeks and I pray things will get resolved beforehand. I am taking all important stuff with me already in case things go south fast. Anyways, this has been an extremely difficult time, and I feel overwhelmed with all this. So please don't reach out probing me for an update. I will update when I feel it is right and when I feel like I can do it. This has been very helpful. Without you guys, I would have never noticed that I had also been abused and that there is most likely more to the story. Even more than what I have found out. It has also proven very therapeutic to write this all down in a somewhat orderly fashion. So thank you so much for all the support and advice. I can't even believe this story is real, as this is too much for an 18-year-old guy to deal with. Now let's see what the online community thinks. Almost all Reddit users feel sorry for OP and they think that the dad should land in jail. One says, "It sounds like the way your father has treated you, making you be the accountant, clean the house, watch over the bills, is what a wife figure would do. Sometimes it seems as though he is taking out his rage on you. I mean that by him no longer having a maternal figure in the home to take care of him and the house, he's making you do it as a way to punish you and your mother, even though your mother knows nothing of it. Making it seem like you guys are broke to stress you out even though you really have monthly finances coming in. He's like making sure you know that you guys are broke because he has to take care of you because your mother left it up to him to raise you and take care of you and the house. I hope I'm explaining this correctly. I'm so incredibly sorry that you have gone through this abuse your entire life and your family lying to you. You coming across your mother on Facebook and messaging her, albeit it being a hateful message, which is understandable, seems like the best thing to happen. Yes, it has turned your life into a whirlwind of chaos, but I know that going forward your life will improve and excel to a point you never thought it could. You're only 18, you can now have a life you've only dreamed of rather than a life with only an abusive father and a lying family. I know it's a lot to take in and deal with, but you will overcome everything and come out the other side in a new positive direction. Also, I'm so sorry that everyone is just commenting constantly, wanting updates and setting up to be reminded just so they can come read the drama because it's entertaining to them. So Opie went to give us one final update, which was, "I am finally free. My father died and I feel no sadness. My father died in the midst of our lawsuit. He had brutally attacked me because I was going to leave him, and the custody service checks that he had been blowing on drugs and women would stop with my departure. Last year my whole world crumbled when I found out that my mother had not left us. My father had abused her and made it impossible for her to take me. He has made my life absolutely miserable. I have detailed this over the past few months here. After I was let out of the hospital, my mother and I got two amazing lawyers. One for the assault case and the other for the misappropriation of the money. The process for the custody service case was quick. He had to pack back 50% of the money given to him in the past 3 years to me directly. No further fines. However, the assault case spiraled. It was found out that he was going to attempt to plead not guilty in the case of temporary insanity. He had detailed his plan to get away with this to his girlfriend, who is not an awful human, and showed the police what she had. So it went from assault to attempted murder. With his girlfriend leaving him owing a bunch of money, looking at a hefty prison sentence, and no more money to bail himself out, he took his life on Friday. I was numb the whole week, but today the realization washed over me. I am finally free. I don't have to look over my shoulder, I don't flinch when I hear steps, I don't have anxiety while checking my phone. I am free. I am finally free. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's story. Your love, your support, and your time always mean the absolute world to me. Now it's time to say goodbye, but not for long. If you enjoyed our time together, hit subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, as it will announce when I am back with more interesting Reddit stories. Bye for now.